happening. We've had some reports from Congo, Nigeria, and even Syria, although it's very mixed reporting on Syria, and I'm not sure how true it is there. But I wondered, if you could explain
Sure.
what's going on.
So, the persecution of Christians, and it really dovetails wonderfully with what we're talking about, because it's part of the continuum. The persecution of Christians by Muslims has always been there from the very beginning, because most of Muslim lands are in Christian territory. And that's why so many of them ended up converting to Islam. And you have small minorities, and that's why they disappeared in some areas. So the Copts, for example, who used, the word Coptic, for example, just to give you an idea of how infused with Christianity it is, the word Egyptian, that's the Greek word, which is Aegyptos. And when the Arab conquerors of Egypt came, they took the word for native Egyptian, Aegyptos, but they just took the middle syllable, Gypt. And that became transliterated into Copt for us. So it just means Egyptian.
Yeah.
But it means Christian because all the Egyptians were Christians. So Copt means Christian and Egyptian. Anyway, so they went from being the majority, almost 100%, to now they're 10% because of 14 centuries of discrimination and, sporadic persecution, which is well documented, by the way. Anyone who's interested can get a book called A Sword Over the Nile, which is, it's not my book, but it's really great because it's based on the primary sources of what happened to the Christians of Egypt. Anyway, what's interesting is if you fast forward, during the attacks on Christians of the Middle East, Egypt, Syria, everywhere, it was, again, attacks on churches, attacks on their persons, of course, extorting money from them as a form of jizya, tribute, enslaving their women and children, etc. That's still going on. Okay. And it's in all the Islamic worlds to different degrees. Maybe you've heard of a group called Open Doors. So it's a humanitarian Christian international organization, which has been around for decades. And every year they publish a report. It's called the World Watch List. And it ranks the 50 worst nations to be a Christian, where Christians are most persecuted. And I write about it every year. And, habitually 37, 38 of the 50 are Muslim nations. And I mean, that to me, talk about telling, right? It's like almost every Muslim nation, there is a kind of Christian persecution. Some are worse than others. Okay, now we can go to Africa. That's the worst. Sub-Saharan Africa. That, according to a lot of human rights groups, there's a genocide in Nigeria. And I follow it closely. And I think every week I have to read about dozens of Christians being killed by Muslims. And of course, the media, they tell you, no, this is about climate, change. One group is being pushed out and they're attacking another group.
They actually do that?
What?
The media are actually
yes,
saying
they do that. Actually, yeah. And they don't tell you that the ones being pushed out are all Muslims and the ones being killed are all Christians. Okay. No, they actually do that.
So what's happening then in Nigeria?
You have Muslim groups. First, you had the terrorist group called Boko Haram, which means Western education is a sin. And all they've been doing is attacking and killing Christians. But now you have what's called the Fulani, they're herdsmen, okay, who live they graze their cattle. And they're attacking the Christians who are sedentary, okay? And they're just butchering and killing them and taking over their land. And of course, also engaging in destroying their churches and other of the hallmarks of attacks on Christianity that emphasize that there's an ideological component. But if you talk to the professionals and the media, it has nothing to do with religion. It's climate change, because the pastoral Fulani are being pushed out and they need more land. So they attack these. But for some reason, they only attack Christians. Never Muslim sedentary areas.
Yeah, and how exactly does climate change force them to kill and butcher?
Yeah, exactly.
So where's the motivation?
Yeah. No, I remember I think it was the Irish president who came out and made a big scene about, no, this is climate change. Don't talk about Islam. Islam means peace. And this was like a year ago. And it's like
mostly peaceful climate change.
Yeah. And then the next day, Muslims attack a church in Nigeria and kill like 50 people. And all of a sudden that too is not about religion. I've really followed this, and the acrobatics they play to just make you think this isn't about religion are amazing, even though it's so obvious about religion. I once quoted a black nun from Nigeria who's like, it's hard for us not to believe this is about religion when they're dressed in black, screaming Allah Akbar and break the cross, and you tell me it's about climate change. So that's Nigeria, but in sub-Saharan Africa.
In Nigeria, do we have a sense of the death toll?
I've seen various reports, and it apparently got really, really bad starting around 2009, and has been going on and off. But I would say, maybe 70,000. Yeah, just butchered.
And what has the Christian response been to that?
The Nigerian Christian? Or
Nigerian or the greater Christian?
The greater Christian response is it's not happening, and there's nothing to see here. Black lives apparently only matter if they're not Christian. It's one of those things where if it was the opposite, if this was, let's say, Muslims being killed by Christians, this would be on the news nonstop. Everyone would know about it, But such as it is, and again,
why do you think that the Christians don't care about this?
I mean, I think to a great degree, a lot of them don't know. So they're basically just misled by the media that they trust. Fox News isn't going to talk about this either, right? So for whatever reason, this isn't a topic for them.
But I'd have hoped that the Church of England or the leaders of the churches who do know about it, they absolutely know about it, would be every single day. But every single church service, they'd be praying about it.
Also, a lot of these churches don't want to antagonize Muslims, and they're more excited and more proud about holding hands with a Muslim imam and showing their wonderful, ecumenicism reach out. So a lot of them don't want to. Pope Francis, he writes encyclicals about this and that. How about Christians being butchered left and right? Any word on that? Nope. We don't want to talk. So again, you have to understand that amongst Christians of all denominations, there's this political correctness, this need to make Muslims look good, and et cetera, et cetera. So they don't want to talk about it. It's if you talk about Christian persecution, you totally overthrow the narrative that they've been trying to build. Because if you talk about Muslims attacking Israel, okay, it kind of makes sense because they're the underdog, they're angry, they're fighting back. Okay. But if you look at the Muslim world and you realize Muslims are dominant there and they're persecuting their tiny minorities simply because of religious differences, because they're not Muslims, then you start realizing, okay, so Muslims are just intolerant. And maybe this isn't about what's happening in Israel. Maybe this is just something among them. So that I've noticed, and I've been following this and writing about it a lot. Muslim persecution of Christians has been one of those most no topics. We don't want to go there. Because there's no rationale to it. Muslims attack Israel, Muslim bomb Western cities. Oh, they have grievances. Oh, this, oh, that. But if you find it's an institutionalized discrimination and persecution of minorities simply because they're not Muslim, how do you get around that? Well, the way you get around it is you don't talk about it.
And you put that back to that Quran that you cited earlier about the people of the book. And
yeah. That's one of the verses. Fight the people of the book, Quran 929. But there's others in the Hadith telling you how to treat Christians. If you see a Christian or Jew, you have to push them against the wall. Don't say salam, don't say hello to Christians and Jews. All sorts of things. You have to hate them, even though you have to live with them, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it all traces back to these scriptural injunctions.